When Gary and Keisha Morrison of Roselle, New Jersey, opened up their beautiful home and allowed his rejected, troubled brother to move into the basement, they could have never imagined that their home would become a house of horror. Good people, that weird sense you feel in your gut, and that hair that stands up on the back of your neck. And when that person makes you feel uncomfortable, please don't ignore it. Follow your intuition. It's there for a reason. This story comes out of Roselle, New Jersey. New Jersey is known for its beautiful beaches, casinos, entertaining boardwalks, and untouchable nature. New Jersey played its part in American history and has a distinctive culture today. There is much to discover in New Jersey, and it's also famous for its food. Keisha Morrison and Gary Morrison were a married couple living a happy life. Neighbors said that the couple seemed to be very happy together. They were a loving couple towards neighbors and everyone around them, and that they always saw them together, and they traveled a lot together as a family, and they seemed to truly enjoy each other. Keisha was known as a quiet person. Family and friends said they'd never seen her angry. She was a sweet lady, and she loved her family. Her and Gary had what was called a blended family, when you have two families that come together and create one. Anyone who has a blended family is well aware that it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of love and kindness to bring that unit together. And not only bring it together, but to hold it together. Gary and Keisha were able to do that together. Kelsey was their youngest daughter. Kelsey was 9 years old, and she was known as a firecracker. They said she had a strong personality, and her 10th birthday was just around the corner. The family was planning on taking her to Disneyland to celebrate her birthday. On April 19, 2023, Gary Morrison received a phone call from the Roselle School District informing him that his 9-year-old daughter Kelsey had not been to school that morning. When he tried to make contact with his 45-year-old wife Keisha, there was no answer. He then realized that no one had heard from her that morning. He rushed home, puzzled and trying to figure out why his wife wasn't answering her phone. As he entered the home, it was quiet and he didn't see anyone. He looked around and he decided to go to the cellar door, which is the basement. He opened the door and he called down to his brother Everoy, and there was an answer. And he asked him if he had seen his wife and his daughter that day, and his brother was trying to get him to come downstairs so that he can talk to him. And he said there was something about that conversation that he didn't trust, and he didn't go down, and he went upstairs. When he went upstairs, he saw blood on the floor. It looked like a crime scene. He said that there was blood smeared around and it had been swirled as if someone had did a sloppy job of trying to clean it up. He went to the bedroom door where his wife Keisha and he slept. And when he tried to open the door, it was locked. So he bust the door open and he didn't find anyone. So he went back downstairs. He called 911 and he was distraught. He reported to authorities that he wanted to make a report of missing persons, his wife and his daughter. When police arrived, they had him leave the house and they investigated. While Gary was on the phone with authorities, he didn't realize it at the time, but his brother Everoy had taken off with his wife's car. When authorities continued their search through the home, they went upstairs and they went into Kelsey's bedroom. It was there that they made a grim and gruesome discovery, a horrific crime scene. There they found 45-year-old Keisha and her 9-year-old daughter Kelsey had been murdered. They had been wrapped in sheets that were bloodied and stuffed under the bed. Underneath the mattress, they would find a bloody hatchet. Several hours after arriving at the home on the 200 block of West 7th Avenue in Roselle, the police notified the family of the horrific news. The family immediately told authorities that Everoy Morrison had done this, that he was the person who was responsible. The family informed the investigators that Everoy was Gary's half-brother, and he had taken him into his home a few years back. He had been living in the basement since he fell on hard times a few years ago. They informed the police that Keisha didn't feel comfortable with him living in the basement. They informed the police that they had asked him to leave and that he had promised that he would be out by the end of the month. And when that time came, he refused to leave. The family also stated that there was some jealousy from Everoy. The family informed authorities that Everoy had been asked to leave. Keisha was uncomfortable with him living there. They had daughters, and the daughters were uncomfortable with him living there. They no longer wanted his presence in the home, and they asked him to leave because they were uncomfortable with him being there. When someone is nice enough to take you in off the streets, and you've been with them for far longer than expected, one would think that appreciation would be in line. You would thank them for the time that they allowed you to stay, and you leave. There have been no mixing of words when it comes from the family. There's no doubt about it. The family is openly, publicly accusing Everoy of this heinous crime. Keisha's car was reported stolen, and a manhunt was put out naming Everoy Morrison as a person of interest. Everoy has worked a multitude of jobs throughout his work history. He couldn't hold a job, and family members had basically given up on him. Other family members did not trust him. They didn't think that he was a trustworthy person, and they would not allow him to live with them. But Gary had a heart, and he felt sorry for his half brother. He allowed him to live in his basement of his family's home. He certainly was no stranger to criminal activity. In March of 2011, he was involved in some criminal activity where some of the outcomes were convictions. Shortly after 3 p.m. on April 19, 2023, the Roselle Police Department contacted the Maryland State Police. They said that they had a homicide investigation going on in New Jersey.
Now, a neighbor shared these pictures with us and identified the victim as Keisha Morrison and her daughter Kelsey. People here say this was such a loving family. Husband Gary, wife, and the child always traveling and doing things together as a family. Authorities came to check on the home when the daughter didn't show up for school, and relatives became worried. So much worry, in fact, in this neighborhood that the school in the area was placed on lockdown temporarily.
They informed the Maryland State Police that there was a vehicle that was involved and that vehicle had been taken from a location where there was a mother and a daughter deceased. About an hour or so after the initial report was put out there, Maryland State Troopers spotted the vehicle. A 2019 silver BMW 750 was spotted and identified as the vehicle in question. They spotted the vehicle on Bel Air Road near I-695 in Baltimore County. The troopers from the division of the JFK Memorial Highway were the ones who conducted the stop. The driver was taken into police custody without any incidents. The driver was identified as 44-year-old Everoy J. Morrison of Roselle, New Jersey. Morrison was arrested and taken into custody on a felony warrant for driving a stolen vehicle. He's also being investigated as a person of interest in a homicide investigation. Morrison was held in the Baltimore County Detention Center until he was extradited back to New Jersey. Authorities are able to detain Morrison because of the stolen vehicle possession, and he is being held without bond at this time. While investigators are still gathering evidence to make sure that they have a solid case, homicide charges have not been announced against Morrison. The family of the victims are very distraught. They had very strong words for Mr. Morrison, and they couldn't believe that he did this. They couldn't believe that he was taken in by Gary and his wife, and he would turn around and do this to them. The compassion that Gary showed for his brother when he gave him an opportunity was real.
Kelsey
and the mother and daughter were found bludgeoned to death inside their home. They had been wrapped in bed sheets and stuffed under a bed. A bloodied axe was also discovered at the scene. At this time, family members are accusing Everoy Morrison, the child's uncle, of committing the crime. They say he was living in the basement of the home for more than 2 years, but recently had been told to move out.
Keisha are deceased.
Natasha Scott says her brother Gary is loving, that he adored his wife Keisha, their daughter Kelsey, and the rest of their older children. A blended family. She says giving was in his heart, which is why she says he did not hesitate to let his half-brother, Everoy Morrison, live in his basement for 2 years because he was down on his luck.
The family is very vocal, and they've stated multiple times that there's no doubt in their mind that Everoy killed Keisha and Kelsey. This is an ongoing investigation.